Rochester, a powerhouse city in the state of New York for many years. Its place in the early history of the milling, photography, printing, and several other industries would be very important in its growth and would help it to become one of the largest cities in the state, and at one point, one of the largest in the country. Over the decades, though, these industries and others would change, and thus, so would the city. This is what happened to Rochester, New York. Rochester, New York was established in the late 1700s on the Genesee River, just south of Lake Ontario. Its location early on was ideal for the milling industry, with the river and its multiple waterfalls helping it to become a center in the production of flour. Its growth would be boosted by the establishment of the Erie Canal and railroads throughout the 1800s, and its population would balloon from just over 9,000 in 1830 to over 130,000 in 1890. It would not just be the milling industry that would see success in Rochester, but also the seed industry, which would contribute to its nickname becoming the Flour City. But arguably, Rochester's most famous industries would see their beginnings in the 1880s, which would be when the Eastman Kodak Company would begin. Its founder, George Eastman, would revolutionize the photography industry with his Kodak camera. This would simplify the once complicated and expensive photographic process to be available to the general consumer. As with Kodak cameras, all the consumer had to do was take pictures and send it to Kodak to be developed. This company and its innovations would help Rochester further advance in its growth. However, it would be in 1906 that the next innovative company would take shape. It was during this year that the Haloid Photographic Paper Company would begin. This company would eventually become an innovator in the photocopy industry, and eventually would become what is now known today as Xerox. The city would continue to grow in population with these opportunities, ranking as high as the low 20s in U.S. city population from the 1920s to the 1940s. After peaking during the 1930 census with just over 325,000 in population, its numbers would stay relatively flat for the next 30 years. However, like most Rust Belt cities, the 60s and 70s would hit the city hard. In the 70s alone, over 18% of Rochester's population was lost. Suburbanization, the decline of manufacturing, and outsourcing would not be exempt in Rochester. Many of the things that made Rochester would eventually change or decline. Milling, canals, and railroads would become less significant as technology and infrastructure improved. While Xerox headquarters would be moved in the 1960s, its jobs would continue to grow into the 80s. However, a combination of obsolescence and changes in technology would see more than half of those jobs go through the present day. Perhaps the city's most famous company, Kodak, would also fall victim to obsolescence, as it would not transition well to the era of digital photography, and would essentially fall with the decline of the throwaway camera throughout the 2000s decade. These factors would result in Kodak's filing for bankruptcy in 2012. One of the few bright spots of the post-industrial era in the city, the company is now a small shell of what it used to be, going from employing just over 60,000 people in the area in the early 1980s to having just 1,350 as of 2020, not even being a top 10 employer in the area. The company now exists mostly as just a photo printing company. Today, Rochester is a more service-oriented economy, with its largest employers being the University of Rochester and Rochester Regional Health. While some of its more famous industries have seen their peaks pass, other businesses have performed well. Wegmans Grocery, which is headquartered in Rochester, is considered one of the best in the nation. Companies like Paychex HR Services and Genesee Beer have also maintained their status in the city. The city's population bottomed out in the 2010 census with just over 210,000 people, and has seen a very slight increase in the years since. A city with an evolving economy, it remains to be seen how well Rochester can rebound. Thank you for watching.